Can college sports programs emphasize basketball and football? Auburn and Alabama are showing us that it's possible. What about in our journey with Jesus? Do we understand the and approach when it comes to faith and works? Let's unpack it. Welcome to the Unpacking It podcast, where we unpack parallels, metaphors, and topics in sports that relate to life and faith. I'm Bryce Johnson in the studio today with Aaron Bennett, our producer, coming to you from downtown Mount Holly, North Carolina, just outside of Charlotte. Glad to be with you. This is one of those weeks in sports where it's a little quiet. NBA coming off the All-Star break, but college basketball is heating up. And we had a big game on Saturday night between Alabama and Auburn. And so I want to talk about those two schools today, talk a little even UNC. I may have to mention Duke. And then we'll talk about the state of the NBA coming off the All-Star weekend as well. So we're going to have some fun. Glad to have you alongside of us today, and always appreciate when you make comments if you're watching on social media, on any of those platforms. Also appreciate when you send me an email, bryce@unpackingit.com. Thanks for rating the show if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. And so rate, review, and continue to share this show with others. We really appreciate it. And so we also want to thank our sponsor, Upward Sports. Be sure to check out upward.org/unpack, and you can start a sports ministry at your church. All right, so I'm coming off last night. Our church basketball team got a nice win, so that was good. Our second win of the season. We've had a tough year, but I hit 2 clutch free throws, which was nice. So that was fun. And then last night, Duke took care of Virginia. Wow, so Duke continues to roll. But I actually want to talk about Alabama and Auburn, because the last few years, they have really built strong college basketball programs. And as sports fans, we know that Alabama football is elite. And, we'll still figure out the post-Saban era, but Alabama's not going anywhere. And we know that they emphasize the football program, of course. And Auburn, I remember the Cam Newton days, but Auburn's been fine at football. We'll see what Hugh Freeze can do there. But Auburn, Alabama football, big deal, big rivalry. The state, it's all about those two schools and what they're doing in football. But now, in recent years, basketball has entered the conversation in a significant way. Because when you think about Saturday night, it was the first time that the AP number 1, number 2 team in the SEC faced off against each other in the regular season. And so Auburn got the win, number 1 team in the country, and they've been great. Yes, Duke beat them earlier this year. Yes, those two teams will be the favorites going into the tournament. We'll see the next couple of weeks. But, you throw Florida's in the mix. Alabama is still in the mix despite losing on Saturday. But we've got some good teams in college basketball. So March Madness is going to be fun. We'll be talking about it in the coming weeks. But looking at it from just a bigger picture, this reality or this approach that Alabama and Auburn have embraced is that, hey, we're no longer just a football school. We've got a basketball program that is at the top, and we've got, of course, football that is still a big deal here. And so I love this and mentality. And over the years, we have seen in college sports, it's tough. It is a challenge to be great at both basketball and football. We've seen, Florida has done it over the years. Texas has had a few moments here and there. Tennessee has had some moments. And so it is possible, but it's also really hard. But Auburn and Alabama are in the midst of, wow, okay, we've also got a basketball program. We're not just overlooking the basketball program anymore. We're not so lopsided toward one sport where, man, yeah, we're just a football school. No. We're a football school and a basketball school. What will be interesting is with UNC and sort of their status, because as we know, they've always been a basketball school. At moments, they've tried to focus on football. And, when Mac Brown was there the first time and the second time, they put an emphasis on football as well. Well, now they bring in Bill Belichick with a huge emphasis on football. They get behind it. They're of course, they're investing a lot of money in the football program. And in some ways, it's like, hey, don't forget about basketball. But we know they are still a basketball school. They absolutely care about basketball, and they're going to have to make some changes to keep up with the bigger changes taking place in college sports. But UNC has positioned themselves to be a football and a basketball program. I mean, even Duke bringing in Manny Diaz, he had a great year. So the last few years, Duke football is starting to matter. And of course, we know the basketball program is still elite and the favorites to win the championship, at least in my viewpoint. But gosh, they were tough last night. So anyway, this whole concept of we're seeing it play out in college programs. The other way that I saw this play out, we're seeing it play out, is the concern that we have about the game of basketball, especially the NBA. We see it a little bit in college, but it's really becoming a concern in the NBA. And so when the All-Star weekend takes place, it's sort of a pause in the season, and a lot of conversations are had about the league this time of year. All right, what's the status of the league? People, football season's over, and it's, okay, are we interested in the NBA? Are we going to start watching? But there is this narrative out there that basketball has become so three-point dominant, where guys are standing around the perimeter, and it's sort of the result of the Warriors and their success with the three-point shot, but it goes beyond that too, the analytics, and it makes sense. It's worth more points. And if these guys from a young age are learning to shoot threes, regardless if they're a big man or a guard, everyone can shoot threes these days, and everybody likes to shoot threes. They're willing to shoot threes, and teams continue to shoot threes at such a high rate. As a Hornets fan, I'm getting a little annoyed by it because they're not winning. So stop shooting threes. Get to the rim. But here's the concept for us today. You can shoot threes and get to the rim and have a mid-range game. It doesn't have to be, get rid of the mid-range game. But the NBA has sort of gone that way where I don't see the Ray Allens. Sure, he can shoot threes, but Ray Allen could hit the mid-range jumper coming off a screen. Reggie Miller, too. Of course, he hit a couple threes a game when he was playing with the Pacers. But, man, those fadeaway mid-range shots were wonderful. Kicks out his leg. It was great. And, of course, Jordan wasn't worried about the three. He's the best ever, and he had the mid-range game, the fadeaway. And so I remember guys like P.J. Brown, that's a deep cut, but played for the Hornets. He could hit that elbow shot or, at the free throw line and those types of mid-range games. And so the hope for us, as I'm an NBA fan, and I'm a loyalist, and I care about the NBA. It was my first love as a young kid growing up in the 90s and 90s basketball. But I loved the fact that NBA players use the entire court. It wasn't just the three-point line. But now it feels like, man, you watch games and they just come down, they jack up a three, it's a long rebound, they go back the other way, and even in transition, they're throwing up threes. It's not as all-encompassing as basketball should be. And even for me, now that I'm playing as a 37-year-old, all I want to do is go down and stand at the three-point line and jack up threes. Well, but I'm 37. So, wait, what am I, 38? Maybe I'm 38 now. I guess I'm 38 now. But I'm giving myself, I forgot. But anyway, but now we're seeing it even in, rec league, church ball, AAU. It's filtered through, and I think the future of the game, it's concerning. And so I like the and approach. Shoot threes and hit the mid-range jumper. Shoot threes and get to the rim. And so players that are coming in, hopefully they can establish their game to be a little bit more, dynamic and not so limited. And basketball is a beautiful sport, but we got to utilize the whole court. And before I jump into the spiritual parallel for this, I know a lot of people are talking about the All-Star weekend and the criticisms for that. But it even plays out in the All-Star games, which this year was weird with the 4 teams. And the biggest issue that I had with it was the breaks. They were taking so many breaks. Like, just play basketball. What are we doing? Enough of the shenanigans, enough of a commercial break. Now we're going to, we got to listen to Draymond Green some more. I've had enough of Draymond Green. I don't want to listen to him anymore. It's one thing if it's Barkley and you're sending it to the intermission with those guys. Okay. So anyway, so that's a side note. But even in the All-Star game, they're shooting threes, and it's all about the threes. You settle for threes. We got to see a little bit more than that. But I was listening to Bill Simmons, and all these NBA guys are talking about, okay, how do we fix the All-Star game? And it's such a deeper issue than the format. And I was talking to Aaron about this before the show. These NBA players, like, it's got to be an inner motivation, and their approach to, okay, understanding the importance of the All-Star game. Because growing up, I used to love All-Star Weekend because it was a celebration of the NBA. It was the old players. You'd see Julius Erving. You'd see Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and all these guys, Irvin Johnson, Magic Johnson. All these guys were there hanging out with the young guys. And then you'd see Kobe and Jordan on the court together, and AI and all these guys. And now it's like we've lost that. And so there has to be a reset and an understanding of, guys, you're ambassadors for the NBA. And so you represent not only your team, but you represent the league and the history of the sport. And the All-Star game, yeah, you got to come and play, with some intensity and make it worthwhile for people to tune in. Yes, I always love tuning in for the dynamics and watching who was going to interact with who and what players would actually, kind of take over the game. That was always interesting. Like, would it be the hometown guy? And Steph Curry won the MVP. It was the hometown guy, which was great. And so I always love when that happens. But this year is too confusing. You got 4 different teams. You got, Zach Edey, good for him. He's playing well for Memphis, but he's playing on Sunday at the All-Star game. Didn't really make sense. But going back to Saturday, oh boy, that was fun. I like Matt McClung. 3 straight dunk contests. But at the same time, it's unacceptable that you got a G League guy representing your league on Saturday night. The stars should be playing in it. Growing up, Kobe, Vince, these guys were stars. They were playing or they were participating in the dunk contest. It's got to happen. And so you can, back to the and, play in the All-Star game and be in the dunk contest. You don't even have to have these random guys that, wait, who is this? What bench player is this playing in the, participating in the dunk contest? Now, Matt McClung has elevated himself and has become the dunker, which is cool. And the fact that he had 4 perfect dunks, well, were they perfect? He got 50s, was impressive. So good for him. Understanding, hey, this is a big moment. I'm going to embrace it, whereas some of these other guys aren't taking advantage of it. But anyway, those are a few thoughts on All-Star Weekend. The funny thing is my wife, Jody, and I, we've watched the dunk contest pretty much every year of marriage. And early on, I got her excited about it. And so every year she still gets into the dunk contest. Doesn't care about the Tuesday night or Thursday night NBA game, but she'll get into the dunk contest. So there are some fans still out there, but we want to see the stars. Come on, give us the stars. But as we think about this concept of and today, we looked at Alabama and Auburn, basketball and football. They've got both programs. Auburn, Alabama, UNC is approaching that. In the NBA, they've got to embrace the and mentality, 3-point line and the mid-range game. When it comes to our journey of faith, and as we follow Jesus, one of the key things the truth that we have to understand is the and approach when it comes to grace and works. And it is this tension, it is this battle that we feel, that we go through, and we have to continue to remind ourselves of the truth, the full gospel, and understanding, the fullness of God's word, and not taking, just one element or emphasizing just one side of it. It's grace, it's faith, and good works. And so let's dive right into Scripture, because Scripture lays it out so well for us, and then we'll unpack it further. But we have to understand the focus on both. And so we begin with Ephesians 2:8-9, where it says, For by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not as a result of works, so that no one may boast. And so this is tremendous news, because when we place our faith in Jesus and say, okay, I can't save myself. I can never do enough good works. My faith is in Jesus because he lived the perfect life. He died on the cross. He rose again. And because I place my faith in him, I receive his grace and his salvation. And so it's not based on my works. And so that's good news, right? So we believe that and cling to that. In Galatians 2:21, Paul says, I do not treat the grace of God as meaningless. For if keeping the law could make us right with God, then there was no need for Christ to die. And so the other thing we have to realize is we can't do enough good things and just keep the law and be, legalistic and, all right, I'm going to be a great person and I'm going to do all the right things, and that will give me salvation, that will get me to heaven because I'm great. Look at all the great things I did. I didn't do this, I didn't do that. I kept the law. And so to Paul's point, well, then there's no need for Christ to die if we could just do it ourselves. But no, we know that we fall short. We know that we can never keep the law perfectly. And so we needed Jesus, who is God, to come to earth, live the perfect life, and show us how it's done. But then ultimately, because he loves us, die for us, knowing that, hey, we could never do that. We could never live the perfect life. And then in Romans 6:1-2, Paul also writes, well then, should we keep on sinning so that God can show us more and more of his wonderful grace? Of course not. Since we have died to sin, how can we continue to live in it? And so what happens if we get out of balance and out of whack a little bit and lopsided on either grace or good works? A couple things happen. So first, if we emphasize grace to the point of God's grace is awesome and I can do whatever I want, it doesn't matter, and he'll forgive me, and man, I can just do whatever I want. I keep on sinning. That's not the heart. That's not a heart that's been changed. That's not a heart that understands what Jesus has really done for us. And so then that's cheap grace. That's disregarding the full gospel. Because when we receive his grace and Jesus takes over our life, well, now our whole mindset changes. Our desires change. Our heart changes to where we absolutely want to obey and do good works, knowing that our good works don't save us. We're not earning anything, but we are responding to the wonderful grace of God. And so we need both. We need God's grace, knowing that we can never do enough. We can never be perfect. We can never completely obey the law. And so there is grace, and we rest in that grace. But this grace-driven effort then drives us to do good works. And so it's and. Yes, it's about, the gospel is about grace, no question about it. And it's also about, we continue to do good works because of what God has done and is doing in us. And it is revealing that our faith is genuine. And so, we want to pursue holiness and experience transformation as we rest in God's grace. And so in James 2:14-17, the question is, what good is it, dear brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith, but don't show it by your actions? Can that kind of faith save anyone? Suppose you see a brother or sister who has no food or clothing, and you say, goodbye and have a good day, stay warm and eat well. But then you don't give the person any food or clothing. What good does that do? So you see, faith by itself isn't enough. Unless it produces good deeds, it is dead and useless. Whew. So that's convicting, right? We can't just talk about, oh yeah, I got faith in God. I'm resting in his grace, and I'm just going to continue to live selfishly. I'm not going to care about anybody else. and I'm not going to worry about what his commands are. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. If we have truly placed our faith in Jesus, and we understand that he is calling us into a life of obedience, a life of holiness, then we're absolutely going to desire to do good works, to serve others, to be selfless. And this is a process of transformation, and we continue to understand it. But going back to the dangers of going one side or the other, I grew up in the faith, and I knew Jesus at a young age. But for a good portion of my life, I probably leaned more toward, all right, what are the things I just need to do? The good things to do. And really it was probably even more so, don't do this, don't do that. And it's very easy, especially growing up in the 90s, it was sort of the church culture a little bit. There was a legalism to it. And all right, if I don't do this, I don't do that, then I'm good. And so I was probably in about 2012, I had this deep understanding and recognition of God's grace. And just some of the teaching I was listening to, I just got this appreciation for God's grace. And this understanding that man, when you become so do this, don't do that, you could become self-righteous. It becomes about you and how great you are and the good things that you're doing. And oh, wow, yeah. You even start to think that God owes you something. It's like, man, look at all the good things I'm doing for you. I've earned this. I've earned this or that. I've earned your favor. And I just remember, just, man, and I continue to grow in this, but the grace of God, I am nothing without him. I need his grace. I need his love. I need his power. And I can never do enough. And what a wonderful thing to rest in his grace. And so we don't want to be so legalistic where it's all about the laws. It's all about the commands. Do this, do that, do good things. And then, in that too, you think that, yeah, because I'm good, I'm good. No. You need. And so a lot of people live without Jesus. They're like, oh, I'm a good person. I'll just keep doing good things. We still need Jesus. The only way to heaven and to be in right standing with God is through Jesus. He is the way, the truth, and the life. So we have to remember that. And again, when we get so lopsided on the grace and I'm just going to keep on sinning and it's this willy-nilly sort of following Jesus, and it's like, well, no, you can't just continue down the same path that you used to be on. You can't like the same things that you used to like. You've got to say, no, God, I don't want to sin anymore. I don't want to continue to fall into those same temptations. I know there's grace. I know there's forgiveness, but God, help me to move forward and to grow and to mature, because it can be common and easy to just sort of poo-poo or downplay certain sins, or I got God's grace, I'm good, it's fine. Does he really care that I keep doing this or that? No, he wants us to continue to become more like Jesus and continue to do good works that honor him and glorify him. And so we don't do the good works for ourselves and self-righteousness and to demonstrate how good we are. No, we demonstrate that our heart has changed, and we demonstrate how good God is. Man, God's been so good to me that we want to do good things. And again, as we looked at James, so you see, faith by itself isn't enough unless it produces good deeds. It is dead and useless. And so we have to continue to hammer home the and. It's faith and works. They go together. So if you just got faith and your behavior never changes, your attitudes never change, it's like, well, what is your faith really? Have you really placed your faith in Jesus? And if it's all good works and you've never placed your faith in Jesus and understood his grace, well then, yeah, you're just trying to be a good human. And that's limiting as well. And so it's this and approach. Again, Auburn and Alabama, they're and basketball and football. And so for us today as followers of Jesus, it's faith, it's grace, and good works. And so we want this all-encompassing faith. And so let's not be, lopsided. And so let's not just shoot threes or just be a football program, so to speak. But we emphasize both faith and our actions. And this is a little bit more of a deeper dive, and we can save this for another podcast. But as much as I emphasize today about works and faith, there are also other things that this and approach resonates with, because I'm guilty of this sometimes. I can get so focused on the New Testament that I overlook the Old Testament. And so as followers of Jesus, we want to study both. It's let me understand, the history of what God has done, and let me understand the Old Testament and spend some time in Psalms and Proverbs and Genesis, and let me go back to the beginning. And let me study the New Testament. So there's that. The character of God. We want to understand that God is love and compassionate and kind, and he's just and holy and all-powerful, which leads to a reverent fear of understanding who God really is. And so oftentimes we can get lopsided where, well, yeah, God's loving and grace and do whatever you want. He still loves you. Well, yes, and he's holy and just, and there are consequences for our sin. And so we have to understand both. And also, we have free will. I believe in free will. And God will ultimately accomplish his purposes. So God is big and sovereign and in control, but also he gives us free will. And that's a big topic, a lot to navigate there, a lot to unpack, but it's the and approach. And so the message today is, let's embrace the and let's evaluate in our lives. Am I getting too lopsided when it comes to, I just got to do good things, and we feel this pressure of, I got to do good things, I got to do good works, and God's going to be mad at me. And no, we go back to the faith. I've placed my faith in Jesus. It's not based on my good works, bad works. It's based on Jesus. That's where my faith is. It's in him. And because of that, as I yield to him, as I trust in him, as I surrender to him, I'm going to go out and do good things with him empowering me. And with the motivation of love, my love for him, and the love that he's shown me, now I have that love for others. And so I want to go out and serve. And I want to say yes when the church needs me to serve. I'm going to say yes when there's opportunities to give, and there's opportunities to sacrifice. And I'm going to put others ahead of myself. And so those are the good works that we get to do. Not that we have to do them, we get to do them because our faith is genuine. And so let me hit these verses one more time, and then we'll wrap it up. Ephesians 2, 8-9. I got a text yesterday because we sent this devotional out, and someone said they love the devotional, but they love these two verses. And he says, this is what Ephesians says, "For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing, it is the gift of God, not as a result of works, so that no one may boast." And so we can't boast like, oh, I'm such a good person. I'm self-righteous. I got this. No, we need the gift of God, his grace through faith. And then also in Romans 6, 1-2, "Well then, should we keep on sinning so that God can show us more and more of his wonderful grace? Of course not. Since we have died to sin, how can we continue to live in it?" And so if we've got Jesus in our heart, and in our life, and we've surrendered to him, and the Holy Spirit has taken over, we can't keep choosing to sin and justifying sin and being okay with sin. No, as we struggle, we say, God, I don't want this to continue to be in my life. Change me. Show me how I can grow. Show me the boundaries that I need to move past this sin. Free me from it by the power of the Holy Spirit. Free me from the bondage of sin in my life, because I'm a follower of Jesus. This can't be a part of my life anymore. And there's hope in that, because we serve a loving God, a powerful God that will free us from that sin. And so now we emphasize our faith in God's grace, and we willingly put our faith in action. We live out our faith. That's the call today. Let's live out our faith. Yes, we need faith. Yes, we need God's grace. And we live that out with good works, obedience, and following him. It's the and approach. So there you go. I hope that is encouraging and just a reminder for us all, and reflect back on where we've been in our journey, and ask God to help us to make the necessary changes moving forward. So for Aaron, I'm Bryce. I'm a sports fan who follows Jesus. I believe in the good news that he died on the cross for my sin. He was resurrected, and through faith, I've been saved by his grace. I hope that is true for you as well, and I hope you'll join me as we live life as sports fans who follow Jesus together. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you next time right here on the Unpacking It podcast.